Hello and welcome, welcome. I see we have Gibbo in the house, Aurora in the house, and Chalet in the house. At least it's who I see in the chat. It's the place to be. All right. I feel like I have some dust on my eyelash. So we're gonna get caught up on true crime. Because yes, there have been some things. Other people are talking about it, but I'm going to give you what I think. So I think first up, we'll talk about the Idaho 4. Then we can talk about Karen Reed and Delphi. But the most interesting things to talk about are with the Idaho 4. So what's been going on the last month or so, maybe 2 months, since Brian Kohberger pled guilty, and now the court is releasing documents, I guess just documents, you could say, photos and things, everything related to the case that had been under a gag order. So they're no longer under a gag order, but it takes time to go through each item and redact anything, personal names or personal information. They have to go through each page of everything. And there's like thousands and thousands of pages. So I'm sorry, I'm getting these notifications. I'm putting them away, but it's distracting me. Thousands of pages. So they're doing them in batches. They're they'll get a batch done, redacted, and then released. And then maybe the next week there'll be another batch, and then that'll get released. So there's been a lot of things coming out slowly. Oh my gosh, you guys are funny. I'll just let you keep going in the chat. But if you have something about Idaho 4, then I'll read that. So hit the share, subscribe. Oh my gosh. I don't know how, maybe if I close this app, maybe the notifications will stop coming on my computer. Stay on topic, Frank. Okay, so let's get into what was just released a few days ago, and that is the knife sheath. And if you don't know what the knife sheath is, this was the only piece of evidence that actually connected Brian Kohberger to the crime scene. All right, to the house. Now there's all kinds of questions, but the story goes that the sheath of a knife that would have been a K-bar knife, all right, that they believe that this was the weapon and that it was used by Brian Kohberger. Okay. But the sheath was found on Maddie's bed. Now, if you don't know what's Idaho 4, there were 4 college students, Maddie and Kaylee in one room, and then Xana and her boyfriend Ethan in another room, that were brutally murdered. All right. I'm just going to say the M word. Maven's hair is on point. Oh, thank you. Ooh, Chalet's got the popcorn out. Okay. And we know from what we have of autopsy reports, from what the families have said, little bits and pieces of what the families have said, that it was a very extremely violent incident that had happened. All right. From the beginning, I mean, I had read a report before the gag order of one of the, there were two officers that were the first on scene and described Ethan as being hamstrung. And then the gag order, and then everything was scrubbed. There was like nothing about that. And finally I got vindicated with one of these documents that were released that did confirm that the backs of his legs were cut. Okay. Because that, and you can go, and it's like an hour and a half long live stream that I had done with Nurse Tony, who was an ER nurse, and about these injuries as we knew them, and him describing like how long it would take to have the, to inflict these injuries, whether if it was one person, how long it would take one person, and stuff. But I think I actually have that one pinned in my playlist for true crime. There's a test at the end of this. Pay attention. Okay. Right. So the sheath. The sheath was found on the bed with Kaylee and Maddie. All right. It maybe wasn't seen right away. Maybe it was after the coroner arrived and removed the bodies. There's no clear indication of exactly when it was first seen. But it was said that it was at least halfway under Maddie's body and possibly under the blanket, or partially under a blanket. So everyone's expecting this sheath to be very bloody, given that information, right? And the reason it's a key piece of evidence, when I said that it's the only thing that links Brian Kohberger, because on the snap of this sheath is where they got DNA. And then there's all kinds of questions about the DNA testing. There's all kinds of questions about whether the DNA on that sheath was from actually touching the sheath, or if transfer DNA can quite often be, I shake your hand, I get your DNA on my hand, and then I touch the sheath. Now your DNA has been transferred from my hand to the sheath, right? So there's questions about that, but law enforcement is going by the fact that his DNA was found there. And then when they arrested him in Pennsylvania, because he had gone home for the holidays, and then they got a swab and they tested that DNA, it matched what was originally found on the sheath. Okay, so that's the only thing that put him on this at the scene. However, there are questions. A lot of people have wondered, was this planted? The Moscow Police Department has been found guilty of planting evidence in other cases. All right. Don't ask me which cases or anything like that. I don't know. Okay. But so there were questions about that. There were questions about how valid the testing was, and if this testing is how they came up with Brian's name. That's always been a huge consideration in this case. that if they had no other clue of his name until they put this this DNA sample into a genealogy. They had a genealogy company run it through their database, and they got a hit with his father. Okay. So, and then the FBI was involved at that point. And the FBI gave a tip to the Moscow Police Department, check into this name. Where was it found? The DoorDash lady put, the DoorDash lady was there. She didn't see Brian Kohberger. Not to mention the car at 4 o'clock. Okay, in the case, there was a white Elantra that was captured on people's security cameras driving on the street by the house. All right. And this car was seen around like before 4 a.m. and then just after 4 a.m. All right. Driving a couple of times and then disappearing, which is when they think that Brian Kohberger, if this was his car, was then committing the crime and then going back into his car and driving away. All right. But there's no proof that Brian's car was that Elantra. Okay. There's no license plate. There's no visual of the face of the driver in the car. So there's no proof that the Elantra was his. Just reading the chat. Okay. Okay. And we don't even know that the murders were committed at that time. They could have been committed at 2:30, at 3, at 3:30. We don't know that. I mean, they're only making the 4 o'clock timeline based on that Elantra, that we don't even know if it's Brian Kohberger's car or not, because when they arrested him and they took his car apart, the labs did amazing work testing. The labs did their job. All right. From the moment anything entered the lab, there's a chain of custody, and they did their testing. There was nothing linking his car to, no trace evidence at all. And people have a lot of ideas, maybe he covered his seats and he did they did the brake pedal, the gear shift, the light, on your steering. Well, they did the steering wheel, and then on the steering wheel, you've got, like your cruise control and stuff like that. And they tested those. Nothing. Okay. So you're telling me he went into the house and they're assuming that he went upstairs first. I don't even know that that's true, because normally you would be able to tell exactly who died first, because the first person only has their blood. The second person now the knife has been used on the first person, and their blood then enters the second person. The third person then has the first and second person on their body, and so on. Then with the fourth person, they would have all. Okay, that's one way they can tell. The other would be blood on the stairs, right? So let's say a single person goes up the stair, it enters on the left. There's 3 floors to the house, but the kitchen is on the 2nd level, and there's a sliding glass door. So let's say you're entering the house, and the sliding glass door, that's what they think. And you go up the stairs, no blood. You inflict injuries on 2 people. One of them, their face is unrecognizable. The mother said that she was propped up in the corner. She was actually kind of propped up in the corner. That's what the mother said in an interview. I haven't seen any documents that say that, but the mother said that. I mean, I've heard rumors that she may have been kind of gutted, like when you field dress an animal, you know, which is not pleasant, but it was very brutal. And if you've ever seen the pictures of Jack the Ripper, you know, they're out there. You just Google Jack the Ripper corpses or whatever you need to search for Jack the Ripper, and you will see the pictures of his victims. Maybe that Jack the Ripper victims, right? Victim photos. They took pictures. That is what this scene should have looked like. Yeah, Jack. There are 2 Jacks involved here. Maybe one of them is a reincarnation of Jack the Ripper. Certainly seems like it. But so they're saying that somebody did that. And then so they would be tracking, let's say, because he had, like, they found no trace evidence of anything anywhere on anything that Brian Koberger owned. Okay. So let's say he's wearing some kind of PPE, right? Protective clothing, personal protective equipment, PPE. And then that's going to be covered, right? Does he have time to change out of that before he goes down the stairs so that he doesn't track any fluids on the stairs? Well, they're saying, the law enforcement is saying that he got interrupted by Xana, who heard something and went up the stairs to see what was going on. And then he chased her down the stairs. That's what the law enforcement is saying happened. Okay. If that happened, he would have been covered in fluids, and those fluids would have been tracked down those stairs as he chased Xana. Full stop. All right. And you would see those prints going down the stairs and into Xana's room as he chased her. Body cam says the DoorDash lady saw BK parked next to him and she waved. I don't know. So you're saying that, because I haven't watched, but I know that there's body cam of her getting pulled over, and she's trying to like talk her way out of getting a ticket, like maybe she was speeding or something, or in some kind of traffic violation, and she got pulled over, and she's trying to say, no, you can't arrest me because I'm a witness in the Brian Koberger case, and she's yapping. I'm guessing maybe Gibbo, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I don't think that happened. Just like Dylan Mortensen, everything she said, I don't even think she was in the house. I'm sorry. At this point, I don't think Dylan Mortensen was even in the house. I think she was just making up that she saw, because if she just gave this indescript, oh, I saw somebody walking by and they were dressed in black and they had a hood and they had a mask on, and that this would, I think they were counting on this just being unsolved, going down in history as unsolved. you know, or maybe whoever did it had some contact with Brian Kohberger, didn't like him for some reason, and planned to pin it on him. And they're the ones that left the sheath. But that doesn't make sense when you look at pictures of the sheath, which I'm going to show you. I have it ready to show you. No, she wasn't saying you can't arrest me. She was saying I'm the DoorDash driver. I have to give evidence in the college. Yeah. Well, like I said, I haven't actually seen it, but she was pulled over for some kind of traffic violation, and then she starts spouting off how she's, a witness. Right. But so according to law enforcement, he was interrupted. He ran downstairs chasing Xana, caught her, took care of her, and then took care of Ethan. So when did he take off his PPE? If he had that, if that's why there's no evidence, because let me tell you, the amount of force needed. I mean, you can go like this, and how long does it take me to go like this 50 times? No, but that's not what it's like in real life. When you're fighting with someone who's struggling, you're hitting bone. It doesn't go that fast. It takes a lot longer, and it takes a lot of energy. And the person doing it is sweating. They could get cut themselves, or scratched or something. I mean, the fingernails all of them were cut off. UWI, is that a thing? Driving under the influence. Yeah, different states all call it something different. We call it DUI we did in California. And so there's nothing in that house. And then you would have a trail going out. So what? He took off his PPE in the room with Xana and Ethan? No. If he didn't take off something and then he walked out of the house, why is there no trail of fluids leaving the house? It just, all that doesn't make sense. But we're here to talk about the sheath. His DNA was in Xana's room as well as on a seat, wasn't it? No, there was a great reenactment that was done. The girl that did it put it on her own channel, but she was paid by Court TV or somebody like that, one of the big channels, to create a model, like a moving model, a graphic model video, and she had him sitting down on a chair. But then I believe the Moscow Police Department, like in a press conference or something, said they had no evidence that happened. Yeah. But no, there's not a trace of him in that house, except for on the sheath. Okay. Which was halfway under Maddie. And so that you'd think that it's going to be covered in a lot of fluid. So let me share with you what the sheath looks like. This is the sheath. It looks brand new. Looks brand new. They might have had some other positive DNA, like test swabs that were positive for DNA that were a different person. I'm not sure on, don't quote me on that. but that was like unidentified. But his was on, I think, the inside of the snap here. The inside of this snap, maybe this snap. I don't know. It's on part of the snap. All right. Where's the fluid? Now, there are some other photos that here on the back, there are like pinprick size droplets of blood, like maybe 4 or 5. I think they're actually pointing to them here. One here, one here, one here. And they did test positive for blood here as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they are just, you can't even see them in this. They're just like a pinprick. That's not spatter. There's some indentation here. Now I wanted to show you as well this picture. This is all made up like it's part of, you know, area swabbed and everything. But look at how dirty this looks. This looks like there could be like parts of blood, you know, that were maybe cleaned up in the swabbing and now it's kind of stained. But when you look at this picture, no, none of that discoloration is here. And this is one of the photos for sure, where they're listing all their swabbing and stuff. So I don't know who made this one, but this is inconsistent with all of the pictures that look like this. This is what it looked like. Let me see what you guys are saying. Aurora did it. Hit the like and share. So I have one more picture that I want to show you. And it's a little bit smaller. I didn't want to make it too big for anybody. So graphic warning. There's no people in it. All right. But it is the bed of Xana. Well, it's Maddie's bed that Kaylee was also in. Kaylee was supposed to be propped up in this corner. So maybe she wasn't. Maybe the mother was wrong about that. But there's some fluid here. There's some fluid here. There's some spatter on the wall here. So quite frankly, I think there should be more. But even with this amount, that sheath is in the middle of all of this, in the middle of two bodies. Okay. Let me come back to this one. Aurora says she's innocent. No, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. If I was on a jury and this was being presented to me, this is the question that I'm having. Like, how is the prosecution going to explain this? Because that alone, in addition, we're talking about so many other things, but this alone gives me reasonable doubt. So one thought I had, so if this wasn't on the bed, and okay, one of the things that people are saying, where's a picture of the knife, of the sheath on the bed, in situ, we could say, in the situation as it is, before they touched it. You take a picture. Where's that picture? Not that we want to see any gruesome details, but we just need to know how that. So if the person who did it left it there, like let's say it wasn't Brian, just assuming, and just don't make an ass out of you and me, no, but just doing a thought experiment. All right, if Brian Kohberger didn't do it and somebody else did, and that person or persons put this there, then they'd be putting it on that bed with all the blood. Right? So just the facts, ma'am. So that kind of gets ruled out in my common sense, because there would be fluids on the sheath if they put it there, right? They had interacted with Brian for some reason, and they wanted to say it was him, so they got this sheath and they shook his hand or whatever, got his DNA and put it on the snap, and then put it on the bed. Well, the bed's still covered in fluids, in whatever amount, and so you would think it would have more. Aurora leaks fluids. You keep thinking of brake fluids. I know. I mean, sometimes I'll just say something, but I'm trying to not say whatever words too much. All right. So that YouTube will hopefully get this out to more people, you know. Yeah. So what does that leave? Gosh darn it. That leaves the police. Now, how would they have? So then I ask myself, if it was the police, I'm not saying it was, but if it was, how would they get Brian Kohberger's DNA to put it on there? Right? Because I believe it was turned over the next day, on the 14th or the 15th, to the Idaho State Police, the ISP lab, where they did all their testing. Well, we know that Brian actually applied to work with the Moscow Police Department. So that made me wonder, well, when you apply to work at a police department, do they do a background check, and do they include a DNA sample? You have to give your DNA sample in order to apply? Could that be where they would have gotten it if they were doing this? And they just didn't like him? And they needed to pin it on somebody? I don't know. It's right after, though. I mean, they did find it. They say they found it on the same day on the bed. You know, did you guys see my Captain Crunch? Is that why you guys are talking about Captain Crunch? Right there. Captain Crunch. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there where I'm just sharing the avenues that my mind is trying to make sense of how this could be. Must be the Matrix. Yeah. Sometimes you just can't make sense of stuff. Well, something happened, right? Something happened. I watched Duty Ron. He's a former police officer, and he has this buddy that's, I think, a former partner of his. I think they were in New York City. Don't quote me on that. And they're all on board with Brian Kohberger having done it. He pled guilty, so he must have done it. They're all on board with that. And I don't want to get caught in not a vortex, but where you're only seeing things that are your own opinion, right? There's a word for that, but I forget it. Oh, Captain Crunch is in the Matrix. Yeah, you've seen Duty, Ron. So I made a couple of notes. They totally accept it, right? But they did mention not seeing it in like crime scene photos to see where it was placed, right? So they're just accepting at this point, all we have are these photos, and they went over like all the markings and what they meant and everything. And they felt like the investigation by the lab, they didn't kind of point that out, but that's what they were saying. The investigation by the lab was done very well. They did a very good job. They have a chain of custody. And in fact, they said the chain of custody was impeccable, especially when you compare it to the Karen Reed case. Okay, I give them that. They praised the investigation for everything that they tested. And I mentioned they like took the car apart and tested so many details. But it was all negative, right? So then they kind of went into like, maybe the car was cleaned. If someone has experience with cleaning the car and things like that, or maybe it's because he didn't do it. I wrote down, like, if he had the PPE, where did he take it off? Right. And how Dylan said that he had that when she saw him, that he had black clothes on, but I don't believe. And I don't believe Dylan was in the house. I was interested in the date the police were notified by security. The security guard at the apartments where Brian Kohberger lived heard an all points bulletin. So he was walking around the parking lot of the apartments and checking all the license plates and checking for a white Elantra. A lot of people have them. And he came across Brian Kohberger's car. So I think that could be the first time that they were alerted to the name of Brian Kohberger. All right. So I looked it up. That was on, he reported seeing Brian's car on November 29th. Now, all of this, and this was like 2022, I think, and it all happened on like the night of the 12th, the morning of the 13th of November. And by the 25th, 12 days later, is when they put out the APB or the BOLO, the All Points Bulletin, or the Be on the Lookout for the White Elantra. They put that out on the Moscow Police Department, put that out on the 25th. And on the 29th is when the security guard reported, hey, there's a car here. It's owned by this student. All right. Maybe it's the one you're looking for. So they would have been running information on him at that point. Right. And it was Officer Payne that had, I think, not only the sheath, but some other evidence that he, and I was kind of like thinking he had it in his trunk for however long. And I tried to dig up what was that about. And it looks like it was on November 14th, one day after that he took it to the Moscow Police Department evidence locker. So he had it overnight. So Officer Payne had the sheet, like maybe a box of evidence that had been collected, and took it in the next day. I don't know. It looks that's shady. I mean, it's like not clear, right? exactly how that went down. Now, it's interesting to note that Payne said on the stand in pre-trial hearings that he was very adamant that December 19th was the first time the Moscow Police Department ever got the name Brian Kohberger. And they got it from the FBI on the 19th of December. And that doesn't add up. Moscow Police Department submitted all of the evidence and information to the ISP, the Idaho State Police, on December 5th. So there's that. All right. You know, another thing, I might as well mention it, and maybe if we come here, we can just search Idaho for table crime scene. Images. Okay, well, there's this picture of it. I'm going to open that in a new tab. Oops, not the link. I don't want to open the link. I want to open the image in a new tab. Okay. That's going from downstairs up. Just wondering if there's a shot that shows how the ping pong, how there were more cups set up in a triangle. You guys might have seen these. Okay, so this has the table moved. Whoops. All right, so let me share this tab. Let me check here. Okay, you guys are having fun in the chat. All right, so if we look at this picture, this is the nice clean stairway going up to Maddie and Kaylee's room. Dylan's room is just to the left of the stair, at the bottom of the stairs. There's a door that goes into Dylan's room behind this wall. And then Xana and Ethan, you would come down the stairs, walk through this doorway, and then turn to your left, and you would go towards Ethan and Xana's room. This is where the table was when the police arrived. There's plenty of body cam footage showing them, and they got to walk, turn sideways to walk around. Also, one thing I don't think I've heard anybody say, these lights being on would have lit the room. It wouldn't have, whoever did this wouldn't have had to be walking around in complete darkness. Not only with this good vibe sign, but also these Christmas lights here. That when everything's dark, that would be quite a light source to light things up. But according to law enforcement, Xana came running down these stairs. He was chasing her, and she ran to her room. You're telling me they're gonna do this little sideways step to get around this table and not bump the table at all when you're being chased for your life, and the person chasing you is single-minded to get you? You're going to slow down and go around this table? You're going to turn sideways and sidestep around? Because, let me share this one. So now they've moved the table over for this picture, right? But these beer pong cups were all set up here and not fallen. Now these on this end are fallen over, right? There's some on the floor. but these were not knocked over. How is that whole table not knocked over? No spatter on it. No nothing. I mean, how do they know this? How does who know what? Or are you talking about the chat? Or are you talking about me, what I'm saying? And they being like the police or something? Be more specific if it's for me. Right? I'll hide this for now. So if you hadn't seen the table, I mean, that's another huge issue with this. How did the police know there was running around? Good question. How do they know? Because did that really happen? There was a circle on the table. You want me to go back to this one? I'm not sure where was there a circle. But it was just, that's what law enforcement has presumed Brian Kohberger would have done on his own. And so there were comments by Dylan that she saw Xana go up the stairs and then come back down, which doesn't align with the PCA probable cause affidavit that said she was in her room and she just opened the door a crack and things like this. No, there was nothing on the floor. The only thing that we know about on the floor was a latent footprint. Latent means you cannot see it with your eyes. Okay. There was a latent footprint in front of Dylan Mortenson's door to support her story that someone had walked by it. That when she opened the door a crack and she saw somebody. Now, early on, there's a guy named Ken Maines who does cold cases. And he also had somebody that was in San Quentin that he had talked with and shared some of the details as we knew them. This was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. And he shared the details that we knew with this gentleman who has since been released from San Quentin, but that's his channel. And this man who knows killers and how they think and how they work said that there's no way, if he would have seen someone, so like if he was walking by, he must not have seen her, because if he had, he would not leave any survivors. The person who if there was one person that did this to 4 people and they saw a 5th, regardless of how tired they are, they would take care of it and they wouldn't leave that person alive. And I think that person is speaking from experience. I trust what that person is saying. And I think Dylan didn't think about these kind of things when she was making up her story. Why do they call it a ring when a boxing ring is squared? That's a good question. I'm sure there's an answer out there. Jumanji! Why do they call it square dancing when they're always circling around? That's a mystery. The circle of life. Oh my gosh, you guys are getting off on circles. Okay. Andy's in the house, back at work, took a pneumonia vaccine and you got pneumonia. Oh no. Oh man. Well, technically that's what any vaccine is. They're hoping that it's a small enough amount that it doesn't overwhelm you and you can build up antibodies for it. But, oh man, bummer. But good to see you here, Andy, in the house. Um, so yeah, there was no blood on the floor. Or if there was, there were just very small dots. There was some very small dots on various walls, but not as much as there should be, in my opinion. um, so those are the main things I wanted to bring up about what's going on with the Idaho 4 case. And it's really scary to me that whoever did it, whether it's the frat boys or whether it's substance related, and there was maybe a hitman hired, maybe some kind of cartel person with experience did this. It would have taken them longer than 7 minutes, but someone like that could have done it. But see, you keep coming back to the injuries and the crime scene, the lack of fluids at the crime scene. Even if it was a case like that, then, I mean, my gut is that there were two teams. One went upstairs into Maddie and Kaylee's room, and one went to Ethan and Xana's room, and they were separate. That, or if it was the same team, they did, or even just one person. Xana, we know Xana and Ethan were already home. They're supposed to having pizza and stuff like that. Maybe they were taken care of, or before Maddie and Kaylee even got home, or right when they got home. I don't know. It would have to be, if it happened at the same time, there'd have to be two teams. If they didn't happen at the same time, Xana and Ethan would have had to have already been done. And someone would have had to have cleaned it up. Maybe they set the table there after everything was clean to try and make it look like it was just a normal party house, and they didn't think about, people are going to wonder about running from room to room. People weren't thinking that far ahead, maybe. But these could be, if it was the frat boys, okay, I think they set it all up with Dylan. I think that's why Dylan made sure that Kaylee was there, so that they would all be there. And I think one group had problems with Ethan and Xana, and another group had problems with Kaylee and maybe Maddie, or maybe it was just because they were after Kaylee, and Kaylee was in Maddie's room. Some people say that they think that Kaylee was in her room and then went, something interesting is all the phone calls from their phone, from Kay, I can't remember if it was Kaylee's phone or Maddie's phone or both of their phones. They were making all these phone calls to Jack DeCour, who was Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. I'm wondering, okay, just thought experiment. There's no proof. I'm not trying to start rumors. I'm just trying to sort it out in my head. Okay. I'm just sharing where my brain goes. You guys can agree or disagree. What if Jack had taken Murphy over to his house, because it was walking distance. All right. Took Murphy over, because I know there's dog barking. There's some dog barking, but then there's also like some lost dog stuff. Murphy got out or whatever. Well, what if they came home and Murphy wasn't there? And that's why they were calling to say, Jack, Jack, do you have Murphy? All right. Did you take Murphy? Is Murphy with you? Could that be why they were calling? Maybe not. Maybe not. I'm not saying that that's what happened. I'm just wondering, is that a possible? Because we have to think of possibilities and then look at evidence. Does it support this possibility, or does it refute and eliminate this possibility? Okay. That's the way investigations are supposed to go. You come up, you follow the evidence, but sometimes when you have missing pieces, what would make sense, and you think of possibilities of what would make sense. It's like in the medical practice, they call it a differential. You do the differential. You think, what are all the possibilities, and then what do we have that can either support or eliminate these possibilities until you're left with one, right? So what if that's what happened? Maybe that's why Murphy didn't have any fluids on him that we know of. I don't think they ever tested him, but nothing by sight anyway. Dogs have good hearing. Because I'm thinking there was a dog barking on some of the security cameras, right? What if Kaylee's screaming? Because there was screaming. All right. So what if Kaylee's screaming and Murphy, just like 2 houses away, hears Kaylee screaming and starts barking? They're both the same. Both houses are the same distance from the camera. What if Murphy's barking at Jack's house because he can hear Kaylee screaming? They're both the same distance away. We don't have any direction with the security cameras. I'm just seeing what would fit. What, all these possibilities. Look at all these emojis from Andy. Thank you. Lots of emojis. Yeah. Just off. So Karen Reed, it's a civil case now. You have John O'Keefe's family that they filed their civil case suit after the first trial, but before the second trial. All right. And so with Karen Reed, it was a mistrial. It was a hung jury. 10 wanted guilty and 2 didn't. Right. And there was like a deadline for filing a civil suit. And so they had to file before that deadline. And I think they were pretty confident that with the second trial, they were going to get a guilty verdict. But they didn't. In fact, it was proven pretty clearly that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car. Right? Karen's or anybody else's. He was not hit by anybody's car. So why the prosecutor and the lawyers why they're still pushing this? I guess maybe they're just trying to drain Karen Reed with legal expenses. Kind of a legal bullying. They know that they're not going to win, but civil cases can take 10 years. And if they can keep her tied up for 10 years and costing her money, makes them feel good. Because they have to know that she didn't do it. And the sad thing is that means somebody else did again. And they're getting away with it. Can you imagine, back to the Idaho 4 for a moment, if it was the frat boys, I'm not saying it is, I don't have any proof that it is, but if it was the frat boys and they did this, and they're walking around today knowing they got away with it, what kind of monsters are they? You know, it's just so sad. Wasn't there some event only a few hundred feet from the apartment that night before? Andy, are you talking about, there was like a big football game in the town, and there's a field called the Band Field, and some police stopped some students to ask them, you know, what are you doing out? And there's body cam footage of that interaction. And during that, you can see lights go on or off in at the house. You can see the house. You can also see some people run in the background, and people. And I don't remember exactly what time that was. Maybe 2:30 or 3, because that was the original timeline, and then they changed it to 4 o'clock based on the Elantra. There was a game party that night. Oh, and Sigma Chi had a huge thing. They had a party, but I don't think the party was only related to the game. I think it was their annual banquet kind of thing also. And then they might have had a party after that, because Ethan's sister was crowned every year. They have somebody that's like kind of like their female mascot. I don't know what they call them. And so they're like an honorary sister, because it's a fraternity, but they're like the honorary sister. And she got that. And I think that's what they told Kaylee that she had to come for, to be at that. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, now you're getting more into information that comes from Reddit and not from police documents. Although there's so many documents, there are interviews with the frat boys, and that say, oh, I was at the Sigma Chi house. Of course, that's all redacted, but we can kind of tell. And there was another party someplace called the Tree House, and I'm not sure which house is that, but it's supposed to be close to the frat house, which is also, I mean, Maddie and Kaylee and Ethan and Xana's house was also close to the Sigma Chi house. So I'm not sure where the Tree House was. But yeah, they've given statements that said, yeah, I was here, I was there. But when you get into Reddit, then that's when you get into the, somebody had posted, I don't remember, there's this Papa John thing or whatever, or Papa Roach or Papa, I don't know, that talked about like there was a fight. And they name a lot, like they say this one guy wanted Xana, but Ethan got her, so he was jealous. And then he was also on steroids, and Ethan said something that set him off, and that there was a fight, and there could have been anger over all of that with Ethan and Xana. So the Ethan and Xana dynamic and motive is more around that, where I think the Kaylee and Maddie motive would be more about her ex-boyfriend having a motive because she had broke up with him. I mean, they had been together since they were mid high school, mid high school, and she broke it off. She got a job down in Texas that she was going to be leaving to. She had already graduated, I believe. She had moved back with her parents, but Dylan asked her to come down for this Sigma Chi event, I believe. And, you know, they had Murphy together, and that's like having a child. And so she's got custody of the child, Murphy, that she's going to take him to Texas, you know. And also, and then you got Jack Showalter, who I mean, him in the at the grub truck and walking them home, or walking them to the grub truck before they got a ride to the house. I don't see anything suspect with his manner or anything. I don't see anything suspect at all. However, the fact that he has a lot of experience hunting and field dressing animals, I could see him teaming up with, I could see both Jacks teaming up together to do that. And then he ran off, you know, and said, "Oh no, I was out of town already." You know, we have Jack Decor placed at the Corner Club with Maddie and Kaylee. Jack Showalter was there too. Maddie and Kaylee go out the door. Jack follows them. So the three of them walk to the grub truck. And then, and I believe Jack Decor is still in there, but he could have left right after that. Oh, there's got to be footage of exactly what time he left the Corner Club. But I don't know what it is. Papa Roger. That's it. Thank you, Gibbo. Papa Roach. Papa Roger. Papa John, the pizza. Papa Roach, because one of the frat boys was named Roach. No, Papa Roger. That's the Reddit. Some people thought that might have been Koberger himself and stuff, but that's been kind of debunked. That I don't think anybody thinks that it's actually Koberger. But yeah, there was some very detailed information on Reddit on this by this poster. That sounds weird, but the person posting that described like exactly what happened that night, according to them, if it was frat boys. But I don't think Dylan and Bethany were in the house. I think they helped set it up. I want to believe that they didn't know that the incident was going to be as violent as it was. I think they just thought they were going to get roughed up, right? Some kind of connection between families or family backgrounds. Very interesting. From what I understand, Jack Decor, his family is actually like the Coeur d'Alene, the town of Coeur d'Alene in Idaho is named after his family. Coeur d'Alene, Jack Decor. And I don't think somebody just like, just made that up. No, I think somebody early on had done some digging and found that information. So his family was very high up in Idaho, right? And then Jack Showalter's family has connections with lawyers. His mother's a lawyer, or his father's a lawyer, works with the attorney general or something. There's some kind of lawyer connection, very high level lawyer connection with Jack Showalter. In fact, people thought that he went to South Africa because his family goes to South Africa a lot or something. I don't know. There was, so you want pizza? I know. Well, as long as we're talking about this case, I mean, as soon as there was autopsy reports, I was looking, what were the stomach contents? And it wasn't clear. It wasn't clear about stomach contents. Because Xana was supposed to have been eating pizza, according to her father saying that he was on the phone with Xana that night, like maybe around midnight or something. He's on the phone and like, oh, well, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, Ethan and I are back home. We were out, but we came back and we're eating pizza and watching a movie. So pizza, and then there's the whole DoorDash thing. I think the whole DoorDash was just a cover. And so I don't think anything from that DoorDash would be in Xana's stomach. Unless proven otherwise. Prove it otherwise. Show me. Yeah, because if everything went down the way law enforcement says it went down, she had just ordered that DoorDash. Either the DoorDash was untouched and not eaten in a bag, and that should be evidence and clear and say there was a bag from Jack in a Box and it was untouched. Or there was a half-eaten hamburger or whatever, and that should be in her stomach. Where is that evidence? Show me that evidence. That should be you show me that evidence, I'll believe it. But I don't see that evidence. Cheese has calcium. Tomato has sauce. Salad. Equals that. Fries are vegetables. Drink nutrition. Yeah. That's another issue that I have. These unanswered things that you like. Answer these questions for me. Law enforcement, if you want me to believe you, then you have to, these are the questions you need to answer. So I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about all this stuff? That's what I think. She mentioned pizza. Now Frank will break his diet and blame Maven. As far as family backgrounds, there was also a lot of talk about Kaylee Consalves, that her father's brother, so her uncle, was, I don't know, in jail for drug trafficking or something, or some kind of substance connection with the so it's kind of like if somebody wanted to hurt one person, but you hurt the person they love to get at them, right? Kind of theory. Possible. But and then Xana's mother was also very addicted to substances. I think she's been trying to get clean, but she was in and out of jail. So there's substances. There's the police came out and said that there was nothing at the crime scene to say that the crime involved substances. And that could be true. I mean, like directly during the crime being involved, having substances involved. But that doesn't mean, okay, so there's like a rumor that Maddie found some substances and flushed them down the toilet that maybe belonged to Dylan, maybe, I don't know, to somebody, right? And so then the person, because Dylan was really close with these other, Emily and some other guy, her boyfriend, Emily's boyfriend, that were known traffickers. And one or both of them ended up in jail later, I think. And so if they had given some supply, again, just and I'm not saying that this is what happened, all right, but we're talking about ifs. So if Dylan was connected with Emily and the other guy and got some kind of supply and had it in the house, and Maddie found it and Maddie flushed it, and then now that supply is gone, now the cartel people want some payback, and so they're all putting it on that, oh well, this girl named Maddie stole it. Then that makes Maddie a target. That's the only kind of motive known or supposed motive that would fit with Maddie. I don't think there's any ex-boyfriend issues or not getting, but I'll tell you, Dylan looks like a mean girl to me. I don't know. I mean, that's just looks. That's totally like stereotyping, but I don't think she liked Maddie and Kaylee very much. And then, I mean, if you look at the Manson crime, there were women involved with that. So that's a possible. I say that I my gut is kind of that Dylan and Bethany weren't in the house. And if you don't know, those two were like survivors, people, you know, that they lived in the house, but they weren't assaulted. And they say first they were sleeping through it and all this. Now we have phone records that they weren't asleep at all. They were awake the whole time. Blah blah blah. I would like to know what's going on. Like, we just know about their phone records from like maybe 3:45 a.m. on. What was going on their phones at 1:30, at 2, at 2:30, at 3? That's what I want to know. Yo, traveling fools. Good to see you. I was in Traveling Fools. He did a game show, which would have been last night for you guys. It was this morning for me. And it's like my keyboard was locked. I was there at like about question 9 out of 15 of the last trivia game. And I'm trying to answer, but my keyboard won't type. And then I'm looking at Google, on my phone, because I can't search Google with my keyboard's not working. And so I'm looking, what F6, F7, something locks the keyboard, and the cat stepped on it, and I just need to tap it. And which F key locks the keyboard, and I wasn't getting a good enough answer. So I ended up having to like restart the computer, and by then the game was finished. And I tried. Gibbo says, going off Dylan's testimony, in the state she was in at the guilty hearing, she was in that house and saw enough to traumatize her for life. She was traumatized, but I think she was traumatized. I mean, we're here. This is my show. This is my opinion. I would say she's traumatized because she didn't know what was going to happen. She knew something was going to happen, but she didn't think that was going to happen. And then everybody was casting shade on her. And so her life can never be the same, because I'm sure there's been a lot of hateful people that were really pointing the finger at her. All right. I don't think she was just a stupid college girl that, I don't think she was ever in a frozen shock phase. If you guys don't know, anyone watching doesn't know, According to the police, the everything happened at 4 o'clock in the morning. And 8 hours later at noon is when the 911 was called. So it's like, why the delay? And, you know, frozen, it was just stupid, and none of it makes sense. And some people think it was because they were cleaning and stuff. There's no way anyone could have stayed in that house with the smell, even in Bethany's room. When those police officers got there and went in the front door, they were gagging. All right. That smell permeated the entire house. And it did so within like the first 30 minutes. There's no way they could have stayed in that house. And I bet that. So I think everything is made up. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. And if I'm proven wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. But with everything as it is, that's what I believe. I don't believe they were in the house, but I think they were close. I think they were close enough to still be on the cell tower so that their pings would look like they were at the house. But I think she grieves for her own life that's been ruined because of this. And I think she's genuinely traumatized. Absolutely, I agree with that. But even watching her, I was finding it hard to have sympathy. I know a lot of people, it's like, oh, she's crying so much and everything, and oh, it's so sad and so emotional, and I don't know, I think it's tragic. I think it's tragic what happened to her as well. You know, I'm not that callous. I think it's tragic, but I think she made a lot of bad choices. Not just one. I think she made a lot of bad choices, and that's believing that she wasn't like a Manson. All right. But that's a possibility. That she was right there in it and is cold-hearted and acting. That's a possibility. I'm not saying that's the possibility that I believe. I told you what I believe. I believe she just wasn't in. I think she helped set it up and didn't think it was going to be what happened. And when she found out what happened, I think, you know, she couldn't admit it. She had to stick to the story that some, you know, mugger, she saw like a mugger in the house. You gonna order a pizza salad? Okay. Yeah, we have Domino's pizza here in Cambodia. Now you're making me want pizza. It's too late. There's a bug flying around. Yeah. Yeah, Dylan. Yeah, that's what I think. She helped set it up and then went and stayed someplace else. And when they came back, maybe they thought they'd go back in the house and slip back into their rooms. This is just a maybe, because the door was seen open at around 8 a.m. or something. They might have gone back to the house to slip in and pretend like they'd been there all night. And the minute they opened the door, they couldn't step foot in there and went back to wherever they'd been holding out. And then they set up the whole unconscious thing and stuff. Curry fries, curry pizza. All right. Well, I think I've pretty much covered most, unless you guys have some questions. I think I've covered the the things that bother me the most and the things that have just recently come out. And if you missed that, you can watch the beginning. But I just want to remind you, no matter how bad the world is, one thing is true, and that is that love transcends time and space. So wherever and whenever you hear this, I love you. Take that to the bank. It's brought to you by Captain Crunch. There. There. Captain Crunch. And moon pies. Blueberry moon pies. Found those in, we were at Rite Aid or Walgreens with, my mom and I. It was like the day or two before I was going to be flying back. And I was like, Mom, look at these, blueberry. I want one. She got it for me. She's so sweet. Alrighty. She's not in the chat today because she wasn't, she said, I'm not going to get up at 5:30 in the morning to be on at 6. And for true crime. I said, oh, that's fine, Mumsy. But when you do get up, please watch it to give me the watch hours. But tomorrow we will do music trivia. I have a lot of fun using the system from Traveling Fools, but I'm not sure if I'll make one or if we'll just do a Mad Mardigan, or maybe I'll just do like a different trivia that is based on music. I don't know. But we'll do some kind of music-based trivia tomorrow for sure. Same bat time, same bat channel. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. That'd be awesome. And I don't flood you with too much. You could put the notification bell on if you want to. So tomorrow I will see you again, I hope. And until then, catch you later.